Good morning. It's Thursday, April 16th. Thank you for joining me in this video blog. This morning's passage is, I'm going to take some selections from 1 Kings chapter 6. You might remember yesterday, if you saw yesterday's blog, that we were talking about the promise given to King David about his son. And now we're going to be looking at Solomon, his son, the king that reigned after him. And Solomon is in the process of building a temple for Yahweh right now in this passage in chapter 6. We're going to pick it up in verse 11, where the Lord has a word for Solomon while he's building this house for the Lord. Verse 11. Now the word of the Lord came to Solomon concerning his house, concerning this house that you are building. If you will walk in my statutes and obey my rules and keep all my commandments and walk in them, then I will establish my word with you, which I spoke to David your father, and I will dwell among the children of Israel and will not forsake my people Israel. So, in this series, we've been focusing on the larger overarching gospel story of creation and paradise, fall and exile, and restoration. Here we have, again, the promise of restoration. We noticed that God had created a people and a place and told them to spread his dominion, his presence over all the earth, the presence of his rule over all the earth. And that was lost in the fall. And so that there's still a people and a place, but no presence of God. But now with Abraham and then David and Solomon, God is entering in and promising a return to blessing. We see it here in this text. If Solomon will keep the statutes and obey the rules of Yahweh, all the commandments, walk in them like his father David did, then I will establish my word with you, which I spoke to David your father. Well, what word has he got in view there? Probably the portion of what we looked at yesterday, 2 Samuel 7, 12 through 13. Indeed, probably the whole promise, but particularly these verses. We read there from 2 Samuel 7, verse 12, when your days are fulfilled, saying to David, and you lie down with your fathers, I will raise up for your offspring after you, who shall come from your body, and I will establish his kingdom. He shall build a house for my name, because you remember David wanted to, but he was told not to. He shall build a house for my name, and I will establish the throne of his kingdom forever. So there will be an eternal reign. One of David's children, one of his sons, will be born to sit on his throne forever. So we think maybe it's Solomon here. We have this being a real highlight. Solomon has now come along. He's fearing the Lord. He's been given wisdom by the Lord, and he's engaging in building a house for the Lord. But if you've been through the scriptures, you know the story doesn't end well for Solomon. So we have this if-then statement hanging over us. If you will keep my commandments, then I will establish your throne, the promise I promised to David. I'll establish your throne and give blessing to my people, Israel. But Solomon didn't. So we know that the promise given in 2 Samuel 7 to David isn't really fulfilled in Solomon, although Solomon was a picture of it, a picture of this fulfillment, but not the ultimate fulfillment of it. That fulfillment waits for Jesus. Now, read with me in 1 Kings 6, 11 through 13. Actually, just look at 12 and 13. And think of Jesus while I read this. Concerning this house that you are building, if you will walk in my statutes and obey my rules and keep all my commandments and walk in them, and Jesus did, then I will establish my word with you, which I spoke to David your father, the promised blessing of an eternal kingdom and a place and a house for his name to be built. And I will dwell among the children of Israel and will not forsake my people. So we keep coming back to these themes of people, place, and presence all week. This passage focuses in on people and presence. I will be with my people if you keep my commandments. And Jesus did. And so it is with the work of Jesus that this promise to David is really fulfilled. He's ushering in that fulfillment. of God's promised presence with his people, a people and a presence. But as we take a few other snippets out of this chapter 6 of 1 Kings, we get a little glimpse too about the place that is promised for God's people. After all, it is God's house, but consider the royal house of God and how it's also a garden. Notice verse 18, 1 Kings 6, verse 18. The cedar within the house was carved in the form of gourds and open flowers. All was cedar, no stone was seen. So they built it with stones, and then they covered all the stones up with cedar, and they carved in the cedar gourds and open flowers. And if that was just the one verse, maybe, okay, fine, a little fun fact. But skip down a few verses to verse 29. Around all the walls of the house, he carved engraved figures of cherubim, spiritual heavenly creatures, right? Those are a type of angel. And palm trees and open flowers in the inner and outer rooms. The floor of the house will be overlaid with gold in its inner and outer rooms. This is a royal home for God. This is his throne room, if you will. But it's also covered with these engravings of flowers and gourds and palm trees. Verse 31, for the entrance to the inner sanctuary, he made doors of olive wood, and the lintel and the doorposts were 5-sided. He covered the 2 doors of olive wood with carvings of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. There it is again. He overlaid them with gold and spread gold on the cherubim and on the palm trees. So also he made for the entrance of the nave doorposts of olive wood. And skipping to verse 35, on them he carved cherubim and palm trees and open flowers, and he overlaid them with gold, evenly applied on the carved work. So isn't it interesting that the house that Solomon was building as a picture of the house that would be built by Jesus Christ? Because Jesus is the ultimate fulfillment of the promise given to David. But the house that Jesus would build is being foreshadowed here in this temple that Solomon is building. And it was a royal house, and it was a garden. It takes your mind back to the Garden of Eden. In that sense, you could say the promise is a return to the garden. With the fall, we were exiled. With the fall, we had to leave God's presence. But we're now, with the promises given to Abraham and to David, and now here to Solomon, in the building of the temple that Solomon was building, we have these promises of a return to paradise, a return to the garden. It gives significance to that torn curtain when Jesus died on the cross for us, and the curtain that separated the Holy of Holies from the holy place was torn from top to bottom, picturing that we can enter now into God's house. We can go into his house, which is a return to the garden, where we can walk with God and talk with God. It takes it from the abstract that we get to be with God and be reconciled with God in some abstract sense, to a picture in our minds of being able to walk and talk with God in a garden, in his beautiful home, which is, in fact, a garden. You see, in Jesus Christ, our relationship has been healed, and we've been also granted a restored mission. What is that mission? To spread the glory of the Lord over the whole planet, to spread submission to God everywhere we go. We're actually spreading the beautiful paradise garden of God and announcing the message of that spread to all the earth. First, we humble our own hearts and return to submission to Jesus Christ personally, but it doesn't stay there. It spreads to people, person after person after person, and covers the whole earth. It does look a lot more exciting and thrilling and amazing than all the paltry plans I come up with. May God bless you and keep you.